doesn't seem to me yet that they want it.
A standstill remaining on the debt ceiling, what lawmakers are asking for ahead of another meeting at the White House.
It's also a day we're here to think about those who are no longer with us. It's hard. It's been a really hard year.
Leaders in New York remembering those killed in a racist attack in Buffalo 1 year ago. President Biden's message to the city. Plus, we'll be speaking with an expert about the epidemic of mass shootings.
We just want to, get a job and be productive citizens, but it's like so many doors were getting slammed in my face.
When does the sentence truly end for someone no longer incarcerated? We're going to explore the issue millions are facing as they try to find a job with a criminal conviction on their record. Scripps News Live begins right now. Good afternoon. Welcome to Scripps News Live. Great to see you today. I'm Veronica Cruz. It's now 3 p.m. in the east, 12 p.m. out west, and you're watching Scripps News Live. So right now, the clock is ticking as the U.S. nears default. Discussions over the debt ceiling likely to resume tomorrow at the White House. Staff-level talks were ongoing over the weekend, and the president told reporters that he is optimistic right now about a deal. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warning the U.S. could be headed for economic catastrophe as early as June 1st if Congress doesn't act now. Live for us out of Washington, congressional correspondent Nate Reed. So Nate, we know that it is crunch time. June 1st is right around the corner. How far apart are the two sides? Are congressional leaders any closer to a deal?
Well, it depends who you ask, Veronica. And look, this is important for the average American for a number of reasons. For one, this could be everything from Social Security payments, military salaries, even interest rates could potentially rise. Those could all happen if the U.S. hits the debt ceiling, if it defaults on its obligations for the first time ever on June 1st. Again, if you ask President Biden, he thinks that they're inching closer to a potential deal. Take a listen.
I remain optimistic because I'm a congenital optimist. But I really think there's a desire on their part as well as ours to reach agreement. And I think we'll be able to do it.
Also in the optimistic corner, Mitch McConnell. When I asked him last week if he was confident that Democrats and Republicans could reach a deal, he told me that we'll get there. But at the same time, if you listen to what Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, is saying, it sounds like the two parties are just as far apart as ever in these negotiations. Take a listen.
It doesn't seem to me yet that they want it. It just seems that they want to look like they're in a meeting, but they're not. They're not talking anything serious. And in the meantime, we just watched the CBO come out and say we're $100 billion further in debt. And so it seems more like they want a default than a deal to me.
And here's what the two parties are saying. Democrats have maintained Republicans should work to raise the debt limit, allow the U.S. to borrow more money to meet its obligations with no preconditions, no spending cuts whatsoever. Republicans, led by Speaker Kevin McCarthy, have made very clear they want to see spending cuts in order to reduce the deficit and be able to raise the debt limit at the same time. Democrats, Republicans really have been in their own corners on this. There is no resolution yet. Of course, both sides hoping to come up with a framework deal.
Right. And Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, in the meantime, has been saying there is a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to this June 1st deadline. But in reality, how soon do they really need to be cutting a deal?
Veronica, even if they were to reach an agreement tomorrow, when they actually are planning on sitting down between President Biden, congressional leaders, and Speaker McCarthy, but even if they were to reach a deal tomorrow, it would take time to move its way through Congress, to write up the bill, to have both chambers vote on it, send it to President Biden's desk. Remember, President Biden, he's heading out of town on Wednesday to go to the G7 in Japan. So there's a lot of timing issues when we look at how close we're getting to June 1st. Additionally, this is the final week the House and the Senate are going to both be in at the same time. They'll be in a couple more times in the couple weeks that we have before June 1st. But really, Veronica, the clock is ticking for both sides to reach an agreement. And once they have one, actually get it on paper and allow both houses to vote on it.
All right, Nathaniel Reed reporting live from Capitol Hill for us. Nate, thanks. So economists warn a default will have drastic consequences, including for things like 401ks and Social Security checks. National correspondent Joe St. George says knowing where conservatives want cuts is a key to understanding why these talks have been so difficult.
The week begins here at the Treasury Department with more questions about the debt limit. It's been a few weeks now since the Secretary of the Treasury wrote to Congress saying that a default in our country would be possible in early June, potentially June 1st, unless Congress acts. A more definitive default deadline date is expected to be announced soon. Meanwhile, negotiations continue, and it can be a bit confusing. Democrats' position for months has been they want a clean debt ceiling now. Conservatives believe the debt limit should be raised in exchange for some spending cuts. So what cuts do conservatives want? To be clear, negotiations right now are happening behind closed doors. But the easiest way to figure out what conservatives want is to look at what already passed in the House of Representatives, the 320-page Limit, Save, Grow Act. Don't worry, you don't have to read it. We did it for you. If you flip to page 15, you start to understand. The rescission of unobligated coronavirus funds. That's a mouthful, but it means Republicans want cities and states who haven't used their previously allocated pandemic stimulus dollars to give it back. Estimates have savings at around $56 billion. On the same page, you see prohibit unfair student loan giveaways. That targets President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, as well as changes to income-driven repayment plans. The Supreme Court could issue a ruling in the coming weeks blocking it, but conservatives want it blocked now. Estimated savings, $425 billion. And while we can't read to you the entire bill in a 2-minute report, you should read page 89. Conservatives are calling it taxpayer protection. In reality, it's about rescinding the billions of dollars allocated to the Internal Revenue Service last year to increase the number of auditors. Estimated savings, $71 billion. However, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says a defunded IRS would result in less tax revenue over time, wiping out any savings. And finally, on page 95, something known as a community engagement requirement. It would mean more able-bodied adults under 56 years of age would have to work or volunteer each month to stay on Medicaid. New restrictions would also be placed on how long someone could receive SNAP benefits. That's money for low-income people to buy food. Estimated savings, $120 billion. To be clear, these proposals from conservatives are being met with resistance inside the White House. Bharat Ramamurthy is on President Biden's National Economic Council.
We have two very different visions, us and the Republicans, on this point.
But still, conservatives say the White House must be willing to cut something. Should people start panicking about a potential default?
No.
Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley says it's only fair for them to try and use this moment to get something.
It's all part of a big compromise to get this spending down.
Joe St. George, Scripps News, Washington.
President Biden penned a passionate op-ed in Sunday's USA Today marking the 1-year anniversary of the massacre at a Buffalo, New York grocery store. The president wrote about the bipartisan gun legislation he championed after the Tops massacre and the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Though he called the law, quote, real progress. He says there have been 650 mass shootings in this country since Buffalo, and more must be done. The president said, and I'm quoting right here, "My power is not absolute. Congress must act by banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, requiring gun owners to securely store their firearms, and requiring background checks for all gun sales, and repealing gun manufacturers' immunity from liability. We also need more governors and state legislators to take these steps," end quote. Now, on the very same day that op-ed was published, people in the city of Buffalo honored the loved ones they lost on May 14th of last year. A bell tolled 13 times, representing the 10 people killed and 3 that were wounded in that racially motivated attack. Buffalo's Mayor Byron Brown, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, and Senator Chuck Schumer all attending the ceremony to honor the victims. The NRA has called the AR-15 assault rifle the most popular rifle in America. The shooting outside a mall in Allen, Texas is the most recent in which a gunman used that style of rifle. Take a look at this graphic on your screen. 6 of the 8 deadliest shootings since 2012 have involved AR-15s, including in Uvalde, Texas. Now, if we expand to the grocery store shooting in Buffalo, AR-15s have been involved in 10 of the country's 17 deadliest shootings. In Buffalo and Uvalde, those assault rifles were purchased legally by 18-year-olds. So there's no doubt about it, an epidemic of gun violence has been underway underway across the United States. Mass killings have become terrifyingly commonplace in schools, in stores, malls, office buildings, even in medical facilities. Catherine Schweit is a former special agent with the FBI and the author of Stop the Killing, How to End the Mass Shooting Crisis. Catherine joins me now live. Catherine, thank you so much for your time today. So, Catherine, no one...
Thank you. I wish I was here under different circumstances.
Well, likewise, believe me. And there is a delay, so folks, please stick by us. So, Catherine, no one ever wants to think about this, but there have been at least 650 mass shootings now in America since that shooting at Tops in Buffalo. So if you find yourself in the middle of a mass shooting, what do you do? How do you handle yourself?
You know, I think that the word that we had right from the beginning, that we've pitched for 10 years, escape, run, hide, and fight, is still good, solid advice. You can't get killed if you're not there, and that's the most important thing. And I know we've heard discussions about, well, what about a semi-automatic? Maybe you can't do that if it's a semi-automatic, but that's not true. Truthfully, although a semi-automatic is likely to have maybe 3 times the velocity of a handgun, and it also, it also has, it's the same as that you can't outrun a handgun, you can't outrun a semi-automatic or an automatic. We don't have automatic weapons, very many in the United States, but semi-automatics, for sure, rifles and handguns. And you just have to try to escape if you can, and that's still good advice and should be taken by everybody.
So run, hide, and fight. And, you know, it's not just grocery stores, but schools across America. What do you make of the active shooter drills that children are going through right now? And if you do have a child, how do you advise them if a mass shooting were to occur?
A lot of people are afraid of these drills. And I think that you do yourself and your children a disservice. First of all, if you're not talking to your children about what kind of training they have in school or what kind of things they've heard in school, ask them. If you don't know, call the school and ask them, because you can't help guide what your children are doing in school if you don't know what's being taught to them. And I think it is important that children, just like with fire drills, just like with tornado drills, have this kind of training that's just a safety training. But I think it's important too for your viewers and your listeners to remember that, you know, schools are safer than homes. Statistically, many more children are killed in homes with firearms than at schools. These types of shootings are still incredibly rare, less than 1%, significantly less than 1% of the kind of firearms violence that we deal with in the United States. In fact, most firearms violence in the United States is suicides. So it's not the kinds of mass shootings that we're hearing about in the news all the time. But being prepared is smart. It's not, hiding in the sand is not a good idea.
But still, gun violence is a leading cause of death for Americans right now under the age of 19, which is why there has to be a solution to all of this. Congress did pass a package on gun reform measures last summer after the massacre in Uvalde, Texas, at that school. But of course, anti-gun advocates are saying it didn't go far enough. Catherine, why is there such resistance to simple common sense reform, like maybe red flag laws or bans on high-capacity magazines?
I think we're afraid as a country that maybe it's a slippery slope, and I think that's kind of a disingenuous, and I say slippery slope, I mean that, oh, somehow we're going to lose all our gun rights in the United States. You know, I was an FBI agent for 20 years. I carried a gun. I have guns. I understand the concept of gun safety. It includes things like locking guns up and keeping your ammunition separate. But I think there's a big fear that if we compare that to how confident you are now about putting a helmet on your child when they ride their bike or putting a seatbelt on. Those were common sense approaches that we took that, yes, they restrict your safety in a car or on a bike, but they restrict your movement, but they also provide great safety. I think we need to get a little more honest about what kinds of things we can do with our guns and how we handle them in order to be able to, you know, fight this battle. And I think what you said about red flag laws or ammunition, or maybe allowing somebody to buy a weapon when they're 18 years old that can kill, 50 people in 2 minutes is probably not a great idea. We need to take the time to pass some laws and then do the research to see which ones are the most effective.
And I want to circle back to something you just mentioned, because you did mention ammunition. And there are some lawmakers, Texas State Senator Roland Gutierrez, for example, who've been pushing for things like bullet databases, ammunition databases, even going as far as calling for ammunition bans in some instances. Now, if guns seem to be protected under the Second Amendment, could ammunition restrictions work in America?
I think I would compare this to after 9/11 and some of the things that we dealt with in the FBI in the 80s and the 90s. We dealt with a lot of explosives, and we put into place, the federal government put into place some kind of what we call tripwires, situations where when somebody is purchasing large amounts of something that might be used, think about the Oklahoma City bombing of the federal building there, Muir Federal Building. Now we kind of look for people who might be purchasing volumes of things that might cause that kind of a disaster. Again, that's what I think is something that I think some of the legislators are considering, and everything is on the table and should be worth it. Whether or not it's practical is hard to say, but until we try it and do some research on it, we're not really going to know for sure. But right now, when we have twice as many guns in the United States as we had 20 years ago, when we have 20 million semi-automatic rifles in the United States, when we had a few million, back in the 80s, I think it's worth trying.
All right. Catherine Schwei is an author and former FBI special agent. Catherine, thank you so much for stopping by today. We appreciate your insight. So to come on Scripps News Live, we're going to take a look at the situation at the southern border right now, days after Title 42 officially came to an end. But first, the debate over abortion continues at the federal and state level. What voters are saying right now about strict bans and the warning from healthcare leaders.
All this week, go behind the myths of criminality in America.
If people feel unsafe, then that's a problem.
The truth about crime. All this week, only on Scripps News.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average, and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
There's a lot to watch on TV these days. Problem is, most streaming options are incredibly pricey, and you'll end up paying for the local channels you can get for free. Luckily, there's a solution. Sling is only $40 a month, and you get awesome stuff like sports, news, and today's hottest TV for half of what the other guys cost. If you already get free locals with an antenna, now you can easily add the channels you're missing with Sling. It's the TV you love for a price you'll love. Visit sling.com/antenna to learn more.
Sam was 8 when we got him. I convinced my husband to go to the adoption day, and we saw Sam. He did not bark for like a month after we got him. And then one day he went, "Rrr." I was like, "You can talk." Advice to dog owners: feed them good food, take them on walks, let them stop and sniff, play with them, love on them as much as possible. Because even if Sam lives to 20, it won't be long enough.
We need some help.
I know. I'm going to CashNetUSA.com. And if approved, we can have the money in our account as soon as the same business day.
Go to CashNetUSA.com to apply for the money you need. How can a photo become a vibrant part of your home? When you go to tryfracture.com and print your images directly on glass. Get beautiful depth and clarity on a sleek, frameless print that's easy to hang and looks incredible in any space. Go to tryfracture.com now to save 20% on glass prints.
These bats will come out. Oh my God.
On a special 1 hour in real life.
Do they know where they're heading tonight? Are they thinking of their past?
I can feel her trembling.
The goal to create something like a Google Translate for non-human languages.
We're going to play back the call an elephant should respond. You ready?
It's amazing. Voices of Nature on In Real Life. New episode Sunday night at 8/7 Central. Only on Scripps News.
A new political endorsement could have an impact on abortion rights in one state as more red states continue to enact bans and restrictions. President Biden announcing that he is backing Democrat Heather Boyd for a vacant seat in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in a special election. That race is likely to determine majority control of the legislative chamber, and with it, the future of abortion rights in Pennsylvania. Also this week, the legal battle over an abortion pill is shifting into a new stage. A panel of conservative judges will hear arguments in a case seeking to ban mifepristone. The Biden administration is expected to urge them to overturn a Texas judge's order that suspends the drug. Anti-abortion groups say that the FDA didn't fully consider the risks of the medication when the agency approved it 2 decades ago. Now, whatever the ruling, the case will likely end up at the Supreme Court. In the meantime, in North Carolina, lawmakers seeking to ban abortion after 12 weeks will have to override a veto from Governor Roy Cooper. The Democrat signed it during an abortion rights rally over the weekend. Governor Cooper says if just one Republican breaks ranks, then the veto holds. As for a federal abortion ban, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley told Face the Nation it's just not realistic on a national level. Haley signed a 20-week abortion ban when she was South Carolina's governor. Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott, also of South Carolina, has called for a 20-week federal abortion ban. And abortion continues to be a key issue of discussion among voters. A Gallup poll found 69% of Americans are dissatisfied with current abortion policies, with 46% wanting legislation with less restrictions. The topic of loneliness has made a lot of headlines lately, and it's in the news again today, as mental health experts say some people are turning to AI chatbots for companionship. But new information shows that dating apps might have a significant effect on a user's mental health. Dan Grossman looks at the numbers and the toll it's taking on users on the road to love.
From the outside, dating can sound exciting. After all, it's a chance at new love and opportunity. But studies are showing that some people who are using dating apps, they're now finding themselves with more anxiety and depression.
I should do something on my phone and be like,
this is Kelsey Perkins.
no, I just hit my knee so hard.
And you can make an argument that the chaos you're seeing is symbolic of something larger than her.
There's gonna be so many weird outtakes, I don't even want to think about it.
Something like her virtual dating life.
How would you say your experience over the last 5 years on dating apps has been?
Absolutely terrible. Nauseating. Awful.
You've probably heard of some of these apps: Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Grindr, the list goes on. But numbers show people are using them far more than ever before. For example, this is the global revenue for dating apps since 2015, as it's grown from $1.6 billion to nearly $5 billion last year.
I like a variety, we got a professional one, we got a video of me snowboarding, which is like my whole life.
But as more people flock to these apps, more research shows they might have considerable negative side effects.
The studies are interesting on it, and it's not good for you psychologically.
Really?
Lots of depression.
You said that very definitively.
Yeah, it's not.
Steve Carlton is a graduate professor of social work at the University of Denver. And while he acknowledges not everything about these apps is bad, after all, about 1 in 5 relationships today start on them, he says there are some red flags.
If you're someone that sort of struggles with feelings of rejection and feeling left out and not being accepted, these apps can only make those narratives in your head worse, right? Because there is a tremendous amount of rejection and people ghosting you and just not responding.
According to a study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, There's a link between using dating apps and feelings of loneliness, dissatisfaction with life, and feeling excluded from the world. The research points out that it's a paradox, as people have more ways to connect than ever before, yet many of those connections can feel empty, fleeting, and insecure.
Yeah, it gives me anxiety. There's just it's so much work to date these days. Very superficial conversations, hey, how are you? How's your week? Good. What do you do? And it's just such a waste of time.
Now, this isn't the case for everyone. Carlton says some people can get an ego boost from a match.
I have 37 that I can accept or not accept, or I can do messages.
For Kelsey, the apps offer a way to feel desirable and connect with people since she's busy in law school. But those positive emotions can coexist with the negative ones.
I mean, I could go on a date right now from a dating app if I wanted. It's just the outcome that never is good. It's just never really worked, because you don't really talk to them for a long amount of time. It's just hey, you want to get a drink? And then they're always usually weird.
It can be both a blessing and a curse, but such is life for those on this rocky road to love. Dan Grossman, Scripps News, Denver.
The FDA has approved a new drug to treat menopause symptoms. Veoza treats hot flashes and night sweats by blocking receptors in the brain that play a role in regulating body temperature. It's an alternative to hormone replacement therapy. Women with a high risk of stroke, heart attack, or some types of cancer are sometimes advised against those types of therapies. This new drug does come with a warning of liver injuries. In other news, the CDC is warning of a potential resurgence of Mpox this summer. The agency is already investigating a cluster in the Chicago area right now. At least 12 cases have been confirmed between April 17th and May 5th. They were all among men showing symptoms. 9 of those men have received 2 doses of the Mpox vaccine. The CDC says breakthrough infections can happen, but vaccinations reduce the severity of the illness. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, local and national groups are stepping up to help asylum seekers as they try to navigate a sometimes confusing situation at the border. Plus, being released from prison doesn't always mean true freedom. Why millions of Americans with criminal convictions are struggling to find work.
Year, Americans will spend $41 billion on auto repairs.
That's right, billions with a B. Why is that number so high? Because cars break down. Your vehicle is going to end up in a shop like this too, and if it's no longer under warranty, you're the one who has to pay the bill, and it could cost you thousands of dollars. That is, unless you call CarShield. With a plan through CarShield, administrators will pay for those costly repairs directly to the mechanic of your choice, including dealerships. That means you get protection on major parts and systems like the engine, transmission, electrical systems, and more. Plus, 24/7 emergency services for flat or damaged tires, lockouts, dead batteries, and towing at no additional cost. And there are even rental car options to keep you on the road.
I've been a mechanic for 35 plus years now. I've seen thousands of repairs over the years. My happiest customers are the ones that come in who have some kind of auto protection policy that's going to cover the repair that they wasn't expecting anyway. I feel great about recommending CarShield to everybody I see.
CarShield has a rich history of dependability, reliability, and success, and has been featured on leading networks like ABC, CNN, Fox News, and more. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company.
My mom told me to call CarShield, and I saved $5,000. You should always listen to your mom.
As soon as my car broke down, CarShield jumped into action, and I had my car back within days.
I've been with CarShield for close to 7 years. I have 3 vehicles covered, and I saved close to $9,000.
I called CarShield and saved over $5,000.
Yes, CarShield is a good value. Every plan through CarShield comes with a price lock guarantee, which means no matter how many repairs you need, the price you pay today will never change for as long as you cover your car.
Call now and save money with your price lock guarantee. It's not a matter of if your car will break down, but when. Call CarShield now before it's too late. Call 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264.
Wouldn't it be great if every meal was perfect? Not just big family cookouts or cozy dinners for 2, but even those crazy busy everyday meals? With Omaha Steaks, you'll love every meal because we only deliver the best. The possibilities are endless, and perfection is always guaranteed. Visit omahasteaks.com/TV to order the perfect meal collection today for just $99.99 and get 8 burgers free.
How does Klein & Spector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein & Spector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein & Spector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein & Spector.
Hey there, welcome back to Scripps News Live. Great to see you today. I'm Veronica Cruz. It's now 5:30 on this Monday. Here are some of the other stories that we're keeping an eye on for you right now. The Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine is no longer available in the United States. The CDC says all remaining doses of the vaccine expired last week. Over 31 million doses of the vaccine were sent out for distribution, but only 19 million people opted for the J&J version, leaving more than 12 million doses unused. Well, the Supreme Court has agreed to take on 2 new cases with significant political ramifications. In one case, the court will review a ruling that allowed members of Congress to sue for government records related to a Washington, D.C. hotel once partly owned by former President Trump. In the other case, the court will review a racial gerrymandering claim in a South Carolina congressional district. And take a look at this. Police in Burbank, California are searching for at least 10 people after this truck rammed into a high-end store. Police say the suspects ran inside, taking up to $90,000 worth of products. A tree and a concrete bench in front of the store were also damaged. Police say the pickup truck used to smash the storefront was stolen in Los Angeles. Excuse me. Today marks the start of a new Scripps News initiative as we take you beyond the statistics and the spin to give you the truth about crime. Now, we're going to begin this series by taking a look at what happens to people who've served time for a crime. Contrary to what many people believe, being released from prison doesn't always equal freedom. Right now, millions of Americans with a criminal conviction on their record are struggling to find work. So when does their sentence truly end? Scripps News national correspondent Amber Strong has the story.
You've probably heard the old adage, if you do the crime, you got to do the time. But up to 100 million Americans have criminal records, and many of them say even though the sentence is over, the punishment remains and keeps them from living normal lives, including finding a job. Native Washingtonian Eric Weaver knows the city well, the good and the bad.
I was raised by my mother, single family. She had me when she was 15, so just growing up in that having and just seeing people that were doing wrong having.
At 17, he began his 22 years in prison for his involvement in a homicide during the city's 1980s drug war. After release, Weaver says despite his best efforts at getting back on track, it was sometimes impossible because he couldn't get a job.
We come out here with the intentions or the goal to do the right thing. We just want to, get a job and be productive citizens. But it's like so many doors were getting slammed in my face when I first came home.
It took a year to find work, a struggle that led him down a different path this time, starting a nonprofit to help people like him. Since his release, some things have changed for returning citizens, and some haven't.
Mainly since the pandemic, when a lot of places got closed, we compete with a population of people that have an extensive resume and jobs and experience, so we don't have that.
That lack of skills, combined with distrust from would-be employers, often leave people like Weaver at the bottom of the list of candidates, if they make the list at all. According to a Department of Justice study, 33% of participants released from federal prison did not find employment 4 years after their release. The numbers only exacerbated by race, with blacks and Hispanics faring the worst, especially in the first few months after release. More than 30 states have implemented ban-the-box laws, a fair hiring policy preventing potential employers from digging into a candidate's criminal background until later in the hiring process. It's designed to allow candidates' qualifications to shine first. In 2019, President Trump signed a similar bill dubbed the Fair Chance Act, delaying background checks for some federal jobs. Now, a new movement called Clean Slate Laws automatically expunge records for certain convictions. It's been passed in California, Colorado, Connecticut, and Oklahoma. But a job is just one battle.
barriers to things like employment, housing, education, basic things like voting.
Sammy Perez is grassroots director with Prison Fellowship, a nonprofit started by convicted felon and former Nixon White House counsel Chuck Colson.
As of right now, we know that there's over 44,000 documented legal barriers to all of those things.
The group works to give citizens a fresh start by providing education, job training, and a sense of belonging on the outside. A belonging Perez says he was missing, having his first run-in with the law at just 8 years old, the first of many.
I didn't have a plan. I didn't have my faith, and I didn't have support. So I found myself 6 months later actually arrested again, this time as an adult.
At 27 years old, he was released from prison and able to find housing through a local church, a gesture that he says led to employment and eventually college.
That healing is important and it needs to take place in order for individuals to be able to flourish and reach their full potential. So, you know, the church and people within the church were instrumental in that for me.
That belonging is important, especially in a journey that often requires leaving behind people from the past.
One of the things that I really tell people is like we adults now, and a lot of us went in when we was kids. And so to come out and say I'm going back around the neighborhood to see what's going on and hanging out, that's not grown, that's not adult behavior.
Weaver and Perez are now advocates for their fellow citizens, working within local governments to change laws and working with returning citizens to change minds.
Being able to offer that voice at the table, I really count as a privilege.
My ultimate goal is to get rid of the word returning citizen and just be a citizen. Like we just want to be acclimated back into society and just be a normal citizen and get afforded all the opportunities that a normal citizen gets.
Eric Weaver, the gentleman you met in the story, now advises the mayor's office here in D.C., helping her come up with new initiatives for reentry. Amber Strong, Scripps News, Washington.
And all this week on Scripps News, we'll have more stories uncovering the truth about crime in America. Tomorrow, we're going to focus on school security. Tune in Thursday night for a Scripps News special. Del Walters will be hosting a live discussion with eye-opening insights from a panel of special guests. Again, that is Thursday night at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, only on Scripps News. Despite warnings that there would be a surge of migrants seeking access to the U.S. upon Title 42's expiration, the Department of Homeland Security says there has been no substantial increase in immigration. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is taking action to streamline the migration process. It is planning to ask an appeals court today to release migrants without them having to make a first court appearance. It takes 90 minutes to 2 hours to process each person, and instead, released migrants would have to report to an immigration office within 60 days. Meanwhile, the process at the southern border seems to be going more smoothly than anticipated. National correspondent Maura Sirianni shares the numbers.
We have been closely tracking how all of this plays out. Today, of course, marks day 4 since Title 42 expired. While it is still early, we want to give you a look now at the estimated number of daily migrant encounters. This is according to DHS down at the U.S.-Mexico border so far. Now, over the weekend, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said there were 6,300 migrant encounters at the border Friday and 4,200 on Saturday. Those numbers are about half of what DHS reported last week leading up to the expiration of Title 42. When officials reported 11,000 migrant crossings on both Tuesday and Wednesday. Again, that was of last week. So Title 42 has been replaced with the decades-old existing immigration policy, Title 8, which makes it easier for authorities to deport migrants back to their home countries unless they express credible fear of returning and pass an interview. Mayorkas says there are now stronger penalties in place for those people who enter our country illegally. Listen.
There is a lawful, safe and orderly way to arrive in the United States that is through the pathways that President Biden has expanded in an unprecedented way. And then there's a consequence if one does not use those lawful pathways. And that consequence is removal from the United States, a deportation, and encountering a 5-year ban on reentry and possible criminal prosecution.
So again, they credit those stiffer penalties for less crossings. Now, over the weekend, President Biden said he believes the situation is going, quote, much better than expected, despite saying last week to likely expect some chaos for weeks to come. Now, this is Border Patrol over the weekend said its focus has to remain on securing communities down there at the border and also tending to the needs of those migrants who may be in distress. Back to you.
All right, Maura, thank you for that. So President Biden says he has no plans to visit the southern border, telling reporters that he felt his presence would be, quote, disruptive. Migrants who are making it across the U.S.-Mexico border are travel weary. Many have small children in tow. They're hungry, thirsty, and without shelter. Natalie Chuck with Scripps News Sacramento is at the border in San Diego with more on a grassroots effort to help migrants.
As the hot sun beats down in this East County desert, migrants from all over the world waiting on American soil, doing whatever they can to stay covered.
She said that they're doing good, but if she would have known the situation, she would have risked her kids or herself.
This mother of two traveling from Colombia to the United States alongside her husband. She says they paid $400 for guidance to the border after taking 2 flights to get to Tijuana. She was told that as soon as she crossed into America, things would be better, but she wasn't expecting to be here for 5 days with little food or water.
Yo he llorado de saber que sacrifiqué a mis hijas a estos. She has cried from sacrificing her kids to this situation.
A few miles down the road, it's all hands on deck at this abandoned gas station. Donations pouring in for migrants. This entire process, all thanks to community members, not government aid. And all of those donations at that gas station in Jacumba packed up and brought here multiple times a day to the border, where hundreds are lining up waiting to pick up those donations. Over here, they've got water bottles. They're picking up blankets. And then over here, we've got clothing donations, even more being spread out as we speak. All of these people, these volunteers, just dozens of them, servicing hundreds of people.
This is like nothing like we've ever seen.
Jeffrey Osborne lives in the area and is spearheading this effort after initially seeing hundreds of migrants at the border on Thursday.
People sprawled out through the desert with kind of makeshift shelters out of sticks and other things with no services whatsoever.
When asked how helpful these resources have been,
Nos han salvado la vida. Ayer antes de que llegaran no habíamos comido nada, ni una gota de agua. Yesterday when we got here and dropped off their food, they hadn't had no meals at all.
And with only a fraction of these migrants taken by Border Patrol each day, volunteers expect to be out here for a while.
If people support us, we can keep doing what we're doing. And we are giving every single person there, especially the families with women and kids, everything they need every single day.
That was Natalie Chuck reporting there from the border in San Diego. We're going to continue to follow developments after the end of Title 42. Straight ahead in our next hour, Axel Tercios has an update on the process for asylum seekers and the lawsuits surrounding the end of Title 42. That's coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern, only on Scripps News Live. So British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has agreed to send long-range attack drones to Ukraine. It's in addition to cruise missiles that were announced last week. Sunak met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in London today. Sunak said the UK will train Ukrainian fighter pilots to use Western jets relatively soon. In the meantime, President Zelensky said a delayed Ukrainian counteroffensive against Russian troops will begin soon as well.
We really need some more time. Not too much. We'll be ready, in some time. I want to be very honest with you. I can't share with you some days. I just don't want to prepare. Not for our friends. There are no secrets from our friends, but there are some secrets from our neighbors.
President Zelensky has visited several European countries, shoring up support for the fight against Russia. In Poland, the country's deputy prime minister says they've received the first batch of HIMARS to deploy near the Russian border. The high-mobility artillery rocket system will go to northeastern Poland, strengthening the Polish army's eastern flank. Polish officials say they are working on another deal with the United States to send more HIMARS to the country. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, if you're in need of a new set of wheels, get ready to pay up. Up next, the tough decision for would-be buyers as the demand for cars and those monthly payments are both increasing. And we'd like to hear from you. You can always give us a call on our Scripps News viewer hotline toll-free. That number, 1-833-4-SCRIPPS. Share your comments and your story ideas anytime.
Hi, I'm Kirk Kaiser. And did you know the average funeral costs around $10,000? And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Don't let that happen. Call right now. And if you're over 50, you can get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance, and your acceptance is guaranteed. That's right. If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam and no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Your coverage begins as soon as your application is received. Don't wait until it's too late.
Just call 800-394-2715.
Coverage is guaranteed regardless of your health and cannot be canceled without your approval. Don't leave your family with a huge bill for your funeral. With one fast and easy call, get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance to help cover funeral expenses and credit card debt, and maybe even leave something for your kids and your grandkids. Remember, if you're over 50, you can't be turned down, regardless of your health. There's no medical exam and no health questions. Best of all, your rates start as low as $5 a week, and your rate will never increase. Nothing is more important than family. So don't leave them with a lot of bills to pay when you're gone. Don't leave your family with a lot of bills to pay for your funeral. Call right now. Acceptance is guaranteed. Call right now.
Call now. Call 800-394-2715. That's 800-394-2715.
Attention firefighters, first responders, military base personnel, and airport workers. Listen closely to this important legal announcement. Have you been exposed to chemical-based firefighting foam? If so, you may be entitled to a substantial cash award without going to court. For decades, aqueous film-forming foam, or AFFF, has been used to extinguish liquid fuel fires. A scientific study has now shown that the chemicals used to make AFFF are highly toxic to humans and can cause a significant risk of developing several types of cancer, including kidney, pancreatic, thyroid, prostate, bladder, testicular, liver, or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. If you or a loved one are a firefighter, first responder, airport worker, or member of the military that has used firefighting foam and has been diagnosed with cancer, please call the Negligence Network to file your claim today. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call the Negligence Network to see if you're eligible for substantial compensation. Call 1-800-300-4858. That's 1-800-300-4858.
We need a small business loan fast.
I got this. Loan Falcon! There's a better way to get a fast small business loan. Go to OnDeck.com, and if approved, get your funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
All this week, go behind the myths of criminality in America.
If people feel unsafe, then that's a problem.
The truth about crime. Tomorrow morning at 7, 6 Central on Morning Rush.
Welcome back to Scripps News Live. So the federal government wants to recall nearly 70 million airbags over safety concerns. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says airbags produced by ARC Automotive may have a defect, and that defect causes them to explode and hurl metal. At least 2 people have been killed. ARC Automotive blames the issue on isolated manufacturing problems, and the company's refusal to issue a recall may force the government to take them to court. Auto loan rates have reached their highest level since 2008. As of last month, the average new vehicle cost nearly $48,000. It's all according to Edmunds.com. With inflation still taking its toll, Americans are holding onto their cars for a record amount of time. National correspondent Kat Sandoval explores why consumers are facing such tough choices when it comes to buying a car.
It means I worked hard and I got something to show it.
At just 18 years old, Will Whitney is proud of buying himself new wheels this year. Even with new and used auto prices on the rise, Whitney says he followed one main piece of advice.
Don't rush it. Make sure you got the good down payment.
But a majority of Americans aren't taking the swing like Whitney, choosing to stick with their current cars instead of buying new ones. New data from S&P Global Mobility shows the average age of passenger cars is 12.5 years, a record high. It's a 6th straight year the average vehicle age has increased, largely because the pandemic cut both supply and demand for new cars. Plus, rising inflation has kept interest rates high and buyers away. According to data from Experian, rates hover around 5% to over 20%, depending on credit scores and whether the car is new or used. That means new cars could be a better bang for your buck.
So a lot of folks that look at pre-owned vehicles may actually start looking at new just because with interest rates being higher on used and lower on new, payments start being a little more feasible on something brand new.
Those high interest rates have pushed average monthly payments for new cars to around $700 or more. Typically, monthly payments for used cars are in the $500 range. For Americans making less than the national median income of $71,000, it's a price they likely can afford. Economists typically recommend spending no more than 10% a month on car payments. People are also taking longer to pay off their cars in an effort to keep payments down, with Edmunds.com finding nearly a third of loans take more than 6 years to pay off. Right now, fixing cars is typically more cost-effective than buying new ones. It's good news for the repair market, which topped $356 billion in 2022. And S&P expect revenue to grow another 5% this year. They also predict new vehicle sales will rise, hitting 14.5 million sales in 2023. But even as inflation slows, experts don't expect new vehicles to hit pre-pandemic level prices anytime soon. There's one factor working in consumers' favor. Overall, in the industry, vehicles are now built to last much longer. Kat Sandoval, Scripps News, Chicago.
Straight ahead on Scripps News Live, an Ohio boy making his dreams come true.
Campus has never, ever been in their vocabulary for him.
After a quick break, his new book that's already debuted on top of Amazon's bestseller list. And we'd like to remind you right here to follow us at Scripps News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We'll be right back.
There's a lot to watch on TV these days. Problem is, most streaming options are incredibly pricey, and you'll end up paying for the local channels you can get for free. Luckily, there's a solution. Sling is only $40 a month. And you get awesome stuff like sports, news, and today's hottest TV for half of what the other guys cost. If you already get free locals with an antenna, now you can easily add the channels you're missing with Sling. It's the TV you love for a price you'll love. Visit sling.com/antenna to learn more.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
I noticed my memory starting to drop off a little bit, and that's what I was trying to turn around.
Introducing Memory and Focus.
I love these Memory and Focus chews.
I love them. They're fantastic.
Help support mental focus with polyphenol-powered brain health support and a convenient pomegranate blueberry-flavored chew.
You can feel the difference.
I like the difference that it's making.
It's very important for me to be focused.
As an attorney, you have to be on your game. Super Beats and the Memory and Focus make me feel like I can do that much better.
I'm sharp. I'm at the top of my game.
It makes me more focused.
Completely focused.
And that's what really drew me to the Memory and Focus chews.
This is the real deal.
They're the real deal.
Trusted by a Nobel laureate, Super Beats Memory and Focus chews are a better way to support brain health with 2 clinically studied ingredients.
You've got to try these.
Go ahead and take this and try this.
I'm a skeptic at heart, and these things really work.
Find out how to get a free 30-day supply plus free shipping with your first order at superbeatsfocus.com.
Every day, more dog people and more vets are deciding it's time for a fresh approach to pet food. They're quitting the kibble and kicking the cans and feeding their dogs dog food that's actually, well, food. Developed with vets, made from real meat and veggies, portioned for your dog, and delivered right to your door. It's smarter, healthier pet food.
Okay, if you find it challenging to give your kids their medicine, try doing it to a rhino. Zookeepers in Australia are training Lataba, a 31-year-old southern white rhino, to take her allergy medication, and it's taken them months to get her to voluntarily accept the treatment. So if you are looking for a new strategy, zookeepers say they distract Lataba with her favorite food while they give her her eye drops and creams. There you go. An Ohio boy is adding author to his resume, even holding his first ever book signing. 7-year-old Peter Heath just released his first book, The Adventures of Marshmallow and Peter. Marshmallow is a white cane with a rolling tip that helps Peter navigate the world. It's all based on Peter's own cane. He's been diagnosed with Batten disease, which is a rare degenerative nervous system disorder that's caused him to lose his vision. But his parents say it hasn't stopped him from making any of his dreams come true.
I wanted to write the book because I wanted to be an author for a long time.
He actually laid out step by step what he wanted in it. So I was like, absolutely, Peter, we're going to do this.
Good for him. Peter says he has more books planned for his Marshmallow and Peter series. He is already working on the next one based on his recent trip to Disney World. And grab the party favors. It is time to celebrate a big birthday that is setting records. Bobby just celebrated his 31st birthday, becoming the world's oldest dog ever. Bobby's owner says he was just 8 years old when his pup was born, but he attributes Bobby's long life to a calm and peaceful environment. Bobby also only eats human food. And according to his latest vet check, he is in good health. To celebrate the occasion, they threw Bobby a party with about 100 guests. Happy birthday, Bobby. Coming up in our next hour, we're going to take a look at some unique approaches being used in Chicago to keep teens away from a life of crime. I'm Veronica Cruz. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Don't go too far because Del Walters is up next.